So we are here with George Friday and David Cobb of Move to Amend. Thank you so much both for joining us at Act Out. So I wanted to just get right into it. The We the People amendment that has dropped now. I'm curious, it states that corporations are not people with constitutional rights and money is not free speech. Now the First Amendment outlines free speech as a right, so why is there this separate section stating that money is not free speech?
So as a lawyer, let me jump in because I think that this is a very important distinction and you're absolutely right to focus in. You see, you, me, George, your viewers, as human beings, we have constitutional rights. They are inherent. They are inalienable. We have them because we're human beings. And to have a constitutional right means that there are certain things government cannot do. Government cannot tell me what to think, what to say, prevent me from thinking or saying what I want to assemble. There are certain things, if a human being is claiming a constitutional right, what that human being is doing is saying some law, local, state, or even federal political process is infringing upon my constitutional rights. So we at Move to Amend, George Friday individually, David Cobb individually, absolutely support the idea of human beings having constitutional rights. But if the expenditure of money in a political election is considered to be a First Amendment protected political activity, it means the rich and the powerful can spend unlimited amounts of money to influence elections, which is to say, to turn our elections into auctions, because I want to be very clear. This idea that money is speech was created entirely by the court. It's illegitimate, it's court created, and it is stealing our ability to actually regulate the political integrity of our elections.
So they're really two separate things, that corporations are not people with constitutional rights and that money is not free speech.
That's right.
So I'm curious also, how do you feel about the political stage at the moment? Because so many congressmen and politicians are corrupted by corporate influence and by this money that you mentioned, how good do you feel that the odds are for this 28th Amendment?
Well, I feel that the odds are good as an opportunity for the 28th Amendment to be a calling call to people, to make people aware of what's going on now in terms of the political landscape. People who are elected to office, the day they get into office, they start raising money for the next election. So they don't have any time to govern. They don't have any time to do what's necessary to make sure we are living in democracy, that we the people are ruling, because they're too busy trying to keep happy all of the people who gave them money the last time, who they want money from the next time. So, and I think people aren't aware of that. They are aware that elected officials are, you said the word corrupted, but they don't understand what the root of that is and what the effect is in their lives. So the 28th Amendment can be that wake-up call for people as a start, and then by backing the 28th Amendment, we can help people to start taking that role of building power to have genuine democracy in this country. For some of us, it never existed, so now it's time, finally.
Right, it's about time. So I'm curious, are there any people in particular that you feel that are in office or that are running for office that could kind of champion this forward and bring this out onto the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House or what have you?
Well, I want to lift up right away the initial co-sponsors of the We the People Amendment that did, in fact, introduce it into Congress. Rick Nolan, Mark Pocan, Raul Gravalla, Keith Ellison, Representative Cartwright, Representative Huffman. I mean, these five people have really stepped out. They are championing this cause because they are stepping forward. And I want to circle back to your earlier question, Eleanor. I am 100% confident that the 28th Amendment is going to be passed. It's not going to be passed in this Congress, right? So the existing Congress are not going to actually pass this amendment. But the people who are going to pass this amendment, either out of Congress or through a state constitutional convention, they are already born, right? Yeah. Think about it.
That feels good.
This movement, we are, I think, 15, 20 years from the actual ratification of that amendment. Some people get freaked out. Oh, we don't have enough time. You know what? We have enough time to do it.
It's a movement.
It's a movement, right? And so one of the things that George and I and the Move to Amend campaign is very clear about the fact that this is not merely a legal campaign. It is not merely a political campaign. It is an organizing campaign. Law follows culture. We need to build a mass movement in this country that is broad, deep, conscious, politically educated, very clear about our demands for a peaceful, just, democratic, and ecologically sustainable society. And once we begin to get comfortable with the idea that it's the rest of our lives, it's the work of building a multiracial, multi-ethnic, intergenerational movement. And by the way, we're going to have fun doing it.
There you go.
Right?
Might as well. It's the rest of your life.
It's the rest of your life, right? So the thing is, at Move to Amend, we are very serious about building a movement to amend the Constitution, and we know that that means actually doing the work of building relationships to build power to sustain ourselves in the long haul.
Well, of course, and that's the point of the show, is highlighting creative and grassroots activism, showing people that activism is fucking fun. Like, you have a good time doing this shit. So how do we get, you're saying like 15, 20 years, how do you get from here to there?
You start by connecting the dots of issues that people are experiencing in their communities. And those issues might be environmental injustice, wage theft, or not having a living wage. There's, dealing with police brutality, dealing with violence against women, dealing with attacks on immigrant communities or attacks on people of different faiths. To be able to bring those voices and those actors and activists together to say there are some common connections to all of these ills. If someone who's working on the school to prison pipeline gets together with someone who's dealing with pollution in their community, they'll find that in both cases, corporations are benefiting from the plaguing of those communities. So how do we halt that? How do we build enough power to say, no, you don't dump in our neighborhoods, you don't dump on our people, you don't dump our kids in prison? And one way of doing that is coming together. And in that coming together, you're coming together across lines of class, across lines of race, across lines of religious differences and age differences and educational background differences, and figuring out how do we come together, stay together, and build power even when and as we have an escalating, I don't want to use the word force, that's too much, but an escalating surge against us, because there always has been, for those of us who are out, kind of pushing, and that pushback is ever calculating and figuring out what's the next way we can undermine the ability of these people to build power. And, there's all kinds of ways that folks, all the way back to COINTELPRO, trying to undermine building power, to disrupting the Occupy movement, a recent example of trying to build power, to now, if we're worried because we don't feel safe in the streets, then maybe people won't protest. Let's chill the conditions for people to protest because they don't feel safe. Well, take the streets. Hold the streets, claim the streets. They're our streets. We built them. So.
And, I appreciate that, George. And to me, I think it's really worth pointing out. See, corporations are not just exercising power today. They are literally ruling us. As surely as masters once ruled slaves, as surely as kings once ruled subjects, unelected and unaccountable corporate CEOs are ruling in this country. And what's really worth pointing out is that Move to Amend began with 12 people in a living room in 2010. Today, we're 386,000 people and growing every day. We've helped 600 communities pass resolutions of support of our proposed We the People amendment. 16 states have now called for a constitutional amendment. And my favorite objective number, we've put this on the ballot in 300 communities. Not just city council members voting on it, but ordinary people in an actual town voting on it, which means that Move to Amend has the opportunity and the responsibility to actually go knock on doors and educate people about what the heck corporate personhood even is and what is money as speech. Eleanor, we've been on the ballot over 300 times across this country. Guess how many times we've won? 300. We haven't lost yet.
Nope.
And yes, we win in San Francisco and Boston and Madison. You know, the liberal bastions. You know what? We also win in Salt Lake City, Utah. We won in Waukesha, Wisconsin, which is the hometown of Republican Tea Party Governor Scott Walker, where they haven't voted for a Democrat for president or Congress in 40 years. Move to Amend is on the ballot there. We won. We won in the state of Montana. Yeah, that Montana. The state of Montana, in a statewide initiative, we won by 75% of the vote. Everywhere we go, we win. This is one of the few campaigns I've ever worked on where I have very easy time getting together liberals, conservatives, moderates, Democrats, Republicans, Greens, Libertarians, Independents, because we may have disagreement on policy issues, and in fact, we do have disagreements on policy issues. But when it comes to the principle of whether this is supposed to be a democratic republic where we, the people, are supposed to govern ourselves in this country, there is actually broad support in this country. Move to Amend is on the move, and it's because we are engaging ordinary people, as George said, on issues that affect their lives day to day and saying, y'all want to build with us? Y'all want to take some power? So do we. Let's talk.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because there are so many conservatives that are worried about for example, in Congress, we don't want people usurping the power of Congress to do its job or to give extra power to, private interests. I mean, I've sat down at the table with Tea Partiers that I agree with this wholeheartedly on, and it's one of those things where you can't really get to the other issues. You can't get even to discussing whether climate change is real before you get to this evil that begets all evil, which is this corporate control of our system.
Yep.
So I'm also curious. So this is clearly the legislative path, and you spoke briefly about the getting people integrated into this movement over the course of a longer period of time. What are some other paths that you're utilizing or that you're looking into besides the purely legislative path?
Well, we can, once we've got 16 states that have called for a constitutional amendment. If Congress doesn't give us that, then we can call for it ourselves. Just like we did to have the Women's Equal Rights Amendment. And that would mean we would convene a constitutional convention.
Right. So,
one thing, whenever I say constitutional convention, progressive people get all uptight. They get all freaked out, like, oh no, we can't do that. And I guess there's this, I've never heard them articulate it, and I say them, I look at you, I don't mean you, but I have never heard the progressives or the liberals, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, it comes out that way. I've never heard them articulate what all their concerns are, but I think it's like, oh, all the progressive nutballs all the conservative nutball will go crazy and take over. Not if you've done your homework. David just said that, and you said, you could sit down with a libertarian or a Republican, and there are key values and key points about our Constitution and about how our country should be in terms of a democracy that we agree on. So let's get that. And then we can fight about redistribution of wealth and climate change. Let's first make it real that we, the people, rule this thing. And then let's go from there. So that, to me, in building those relationships, we'll be able to come together and not worry about what will happen in a constitutional convention. I welcome it. I think it would be fantastic.
Because, it's important to remember that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It is actually the framework for how our legal and political system is supposed to operate. The differences that people have on policy differences, those are political questions, and they should be grappled with, and they should be debated. And,
yep.
There should be that
struggle those through in the
process.
Yes,
in the public process. But here's the thing. When the U.S. Supreme Court turns a political question into a constitutional law question, they've just turned we the people from active participants grappling with one another to mere spectators, where we watch what other people do, what they do. So here's the thing. Move to Amend agrees absolutely. We need a political process that is engaging at the local level and the state level and the federal and congressional level all at the same time. But it doesn't stop there. Move to Amend is actually engaged in an outreach and engagement process where we're partnering with the Hip Hop Congress to do an educational forum called What the Bleep Happened to Hip Hop? Short answer, the corporate commodification of what began as a liberatory art form is what happened to hip hop music. And imagine whenever you get older white liberal folks together with younger black and brown and Asian folks who were actually having these kinds of political conversations together. Answer, something magic is what happens. But it doesn't end there. We have an interfaith caucus where people who are doing this work because of their faith convictions, and I'm talking about Christians and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists, you name it. If you are doing this work because of it, you're called to it spiritually, then we invite you into what we call the Interfaith Caucus. We have a labor caucus where organized labor are coming together to help push the We the People Amendment. And one of the most exciting things, we have a newly developed art and culture working group where artists are actually being engaged with Move to Amend, because I think, frankly, and this is not my line, but the real role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. We got to make it not just inevitable, we got to make it sexy and fun, right? You feel that?
One of my favorite shirts to wear on stage was a shirt that said "Politics are sexy."
There you go.
I hear you.
You got that.
Wow.
And so now that is one level. We have Resist to Amend, an effort to engage people in a process to say, what does dignified, nonviolent civil disobedience look like as a tactic in this movement? We have Pledge to Amend, where we're going to candidates for office at the local, state, and federal level, challenging them. Will you pledge to support the We the People Amendment to abolish corporate constitutional rights and money as speech? We have the Vote to Amend, where we're going to voters to say, stop giving your votes to these a-holes who are continuing to resist the people's will. So all I'm getting at is you go to that website, movetoamend.org, it's like drinking out of a fire hydrant, right? I mean,
There are
there's
a
so
lot of options.
much
Yes.
stuff. But think of it as a menu, right? And if you, the viewer, are interested in rolling with us, any way that you want to work with us. If you're retired and you got 40, 50 hours a week, we got 40 to 50 hours a week of work for you. If you got 1 hour a month, we'll find a way to work with you anywhere in between. We really do believe you have to use all the tools, all the tactics and strategies are on the table at Move to Amend.
So how would somebody get involved? Because this idea of money in politics, this idea of corporate personhood can sound a little obtuse to people. How would you, and you spoke about connecting these issues to really everything. It's really the root of all these issues that we're dealing with as a country. Right. How would you, for example, I mean, right now it's just because it's so fresh, the riots that are happening in Baltimore. How would you connect this idea of corporate personhood so directly to the Black Lives Matter movement or to the riots happening in Baltimore?
It would feel, I think it would feel detached, or in some ways difficult for someone to say, okay, the way I'm going to react to, or the way I'm going to respond to my own grief and anger and rage about what's going on in the street is to work with Move to Amend. Because there's not going to be an immediate balm for you. It's not going to give you a sense of immediate satisfaction, because we are in a long game. I often think you named some of the past movements that we learned from. For me, not just the civil rights movement, but the abolitionist movement is one I think of, because I studied it in school and I know they made a huge bunch of mistakes. But what I would want to make sure I emphasize in this is what does make sense for people who are dealing with that rage and that anger is being able to address the root cause. Because the manifestation of oppression of Black and brown communities, exploitation, economic exploitation that now results in the beginning of fascism, and that's what people are experiencing. So what one reaction might be for people is to take that inward, and you have lots of inward rage, or you explode outward. And what it might change, my mother used to joke, and it sounds kind of scary, but when people were rioting during the 60s or even in the 70s, is that, well, damn, you got to go home and your house and your neighborhood is all messed up. True. So I was with her there, but you do that, and you do that explosion, but then you look around and your life hasn't changed. There's not a significant change. Focusing on Move to Amend, looking at the website and finding out, is there a local affiliate where I am? If there's not, can I start one? Can I pull together 2 or 3 or 4 people to start working based on this issue of Black Lives Matter, all lives matter? How do we connect it to what is going on that corporations are driving in terms of taking away our own power, our own ability to speak, our own ability to influence what's going on with my police department, with my government, with my school, and make changes? And they will see they'll be able to do that. One benefit from, I think, the work that we've been doing for these years with the folks, those 380 plus thousand people who are connected to us, is helping our affiliates to develop a skill set so that they're able to be effective organizers. You can knock on a door, but if you're knocking on a door in a neighborhood that's not your neighborhood, and you don't share the same ethnic background and cultural background as those folks, you're not going to get very far. You're going to leave with your head hanging down, very disappointed and maybe just a little bit pissed off. But if you have an anti-oppression skill set, and I often refer to it as a community building skill set, because I'm not against a lot of stuff. I'm not an anti-person. I'm for community. And in a genuine community, there's not oppression because you've done the work so that you're able to deal with privilege, recognize oppression, mitigate oppression with strategic use of privilege, which is one of the things we often talk about. And then you're able to create power. So what might happen in a setting where we're trying to confront a racist school board that's doing lots of suspending of young people, and then suspension becomes, out of school suspension becomes being in prison, and before you know it, school to prison pipeline, just like that. So if we wanted to confront that, and I'm a parent of students and David's an ally, well, we go together. So because of the conditioning of people in this country, David's a lawyer, he's white, he's a man, there's a way that he can knock down some barriers so that people can hear my message about my students, about my children, about my school and those values, because that's what happens when you partner strategic use of privilege with recognized oppression. And then you've got a formula for winning. And if we do that 386 plus thousand times, we have a movement.
And 386,000 becomes 500,000, becomes 750,000, becomes 2 million. That's how movements work. And I also want to pick up on George's point. One of the things that was really exciting was helping our affiliates do what we called the We the People Listen campaign, where we actually built an instrument, a survey instrument, to go knock on doors and say, I'm not here to sell anything. I'm not here even to ask you to vote for anything. But I've got a series of questions to ask you about how our community is looking and how our country is doing. Do you have just 5 to 10 minutes? I'd just like to ask your opinion. And a lot of people, when they first heard this as a process, and again, this is a menu, they don't have to do it, but we made it available. They were like, I don't know. I can't tell you, Eleanor, the number of people who got so excited. They had never done something like that before. And what they found is that a lot of the people behind those doors start off with, what do you want? To, oh my God, you're actually asking my opinion? Well, I got a lot to say.
Right.
Right? And it's really interesting to me to see that we actually, as human beings, as primates, we can actually build connection, but frankly, only if as a man, I understand and are at least aware of some of the triggers that I inadvertently do because I've been steeped in this patriarchal culture and I don't know any better. But if I learn what some of those are, then I can navigate. Not in some kind of bullshit, like political correct way, but because I'm a loving person and I don't want to be unintentionally triggering people to be angry. I want to actually build a relationship. As a white person, I have to actually know and understand the history of white supremacy and imperialism and what that actually means, and to be willing to talk about it. And not in some kind of white liberal guilt way, but just be aware of it. An honest conversation. Because I'll tell you one thing, Eleanor, as a white person, I have never met a person of color who has said, thank you for your guilt. That really helped so much.
Dang.
You know,
No.
I've never had that.
No.
But what I have had is honest conversation with people, and I have seen in my own lived experience a change in the dynamic, an ability to actually relate honestly, human to human. It ain't easy. And I want to be clear, if I step into a space and I say, I want to have an honest conversation, I've just elevated what I'm saying my conduct will be. Right? But by doing that and then holding that space, and I want Move to Men to be the kind of organization where it's not just the leadership, but the rank and file Move to Menders can roll into any group and say, I want to listen, I want to work, I want to build, because we want to build power together.
There you go. I mean, it's not very complicated, but it does take developing a skill set and practicing that like one might a Buddhist practice. Because you do, it's every day for the rest of your life. And it's, it's no small commitment, but we're here. I mean,
yeah, what else are you going to do?
What you going to do?
And also, of course, and part of that is, of course, sort of a Buddhist concept too, like stepping outside of yourself, understanding your privilege or understanding oppression that is around you that you might not have experienced firsthand, but as an ally.
Or contribute to consciously.
Right.
Because I've rarely met people in our movement, in our circles, who are aware that they contributed to or are collaborating with oppression. No one says that. No, nobody at the marches, would say, oh yeah, I'm an active collaborator in imperialism and oppression. However, we are. So without feeling like you're worthless, how can we be in community together, building power, addressing the systems that are taking power from us so that we have the kind of world we deserve? That is worth spending the rest of your life figuring out what it looks like and doing the work. Having setbacks, having successes, celebrating both, hanging in there, and we'll get there together.
And that's life. Just one thing, wrapping up, because I'm curious, particularly in my age group, 18 to 30, there is this huge concept of, well, apathy is sexier than politics. And, who gives a fuck? Because they don't care about us anyway. And like you said, like, when you finally get to people, everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to tell you what they think is fucked up and what they think is messed up, but they don't vote. They're not politically engaged, not politically active. And because Move to Amend is going for this on so many different fronts, legislative, grassroots, what would you say to someone, who's 25 or my age and just says, well, what the fuck does it matter? They're not going to listen anyway.
What are you willing to do? So it starts with, what's your vision of the kind of world you want? And really hearing what that looks like. And then say, okay, what are you willing to do to make that happen? Is it 50 hours a week? Is it 1 hour a month? And then we do have all these ways that you can use that time to build towards that vision. Is it worth it to you to put in 5 hours a week, 1 hour a month to get there? And if you say yes, then we roll. If you say no, it's like, I hate it for you. I'll light a candle and God bless you. Because when you go to sleep, it's not like the, I heard you say today on a call that it's not like the people who are ruling us are going to sit back and say, oh, Move to Amend has got 2 million people now. We gonna back off.
Yeah, we give.
Yeah, we're done now. No, they're going to escalate and escalate. They're escalating now. We have militarized local police forces with like tanks and stuff. What's up with that? So if we don't pay attention, folks in your 18 to 30 age group, we'll just like back off and say, F it. I'm just going to have an organic garden in the backyard and homeschool my kids, and we're going to be cool. Keep our head down. When you put your head up, when your kids are in high school, it'll be like, oh, yeah, you go through school, you get searched, you get checked, you got a camera here, a camera there. That's not the world most of us want. And if you want a world that looks anything like your idea of a good world, you better do something.
I want to take a different tact. So to the 18 to 30-year-old, the first thing that I'm going to say is, I'm sorry. And I'm not, that is not pandering. I'm sorry that my generation and the generations before me have given you such a mess to clean up.
Right.
So I ain't joking. I'm sorry. And let's do the work together. And here's the thing. See, we at Move to Men need that new energy. We need the youth. We need the energy. We need the new thinking. We need to be challenged. And you know what? people 18 to 30 need Move to Amend to succeed. They need the experience, the strategic thinking. We need each other. And that's the sweet spot of solidarity, Eleanor, when you're doing something not just because it makes you feel better or feel good, but because you see that your victory, frankly, your liberation is wrapped up in everybody's liberation. That's whenever you're actually talking about something. Because I'll tell you this, my lived experience has been that most people are not apathetic, because apathy means you don't care. People care. People are cynical today, especially young people. Cynicism has been cultivated. Cynicism is more cool. You know what? That's what the ruling elite want you to do, man. Like, you are being played like a
drinking
fool.
the Kool-Aid, baby.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid. You are a
Yes.
straight up sucker if you're just playing that kind of cynicism game. So what I'm saying is, look, I have fun with the activism that I do. It's art, it's music, it's culture, it's dancing, and it's serious business as well. It's life, right? Like, there are different ways, and I will manifest in different sort of ways. But at Move to Amend, we take a lesson from the civil rights movement. Get in where you fit in.
That's right.
Right? And so if it's art and culture, we got something for you over here. If you're a person of faith and that's how you do your work, we got it over here. Organized labor, gotcha. Environmentalist, you're working on immigration issues? Well, let's talk about the corporatization of these detention centers and why immigration policy is actually corporate policy.
Right.
And the school to prison pipeline that George mentioned, like in passing a couple of times, let's take a moment to really anchor the fact that people are making money off of warehousing people as a commodity, and it's not even labor, it's literally locking up their bodies, and they make more money by criminalizing these people. Oh, and isn't it interesting? It's young black and brown people who are being targeted by it. So I tell young people, really, you need to get involved with us. We need to listen to you. Move to Amend stands ready to do that. It doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you're stepping into this movement, if you want to be part of a peaceful, just, democratic, and ecologically sustainable society, we've got work to do. Move to Amend wants to work with you.
And for younger people, it's not stepping into the movement. When you say we stand ready, and most of us are skilled up to be ready to say, oh, you're 18, it's not like you don't have leadership skills, vision. We're not going to stick you in the back and say, take out the trash and make photocopies and collate these and carry this. We appreciate that energy, of course, but we know too, because age is a privilege, ageism exists as well. So we have, for hopefully most of us, are ready to be able to share our power with younger people, recognize the power of younger people, so that it's not just, oh yeah, young people, great, let's put them to work and squeeze them until they're dry. It's not like that. So, especially since some of us started doing this work when we were in our teens too, so we remember what it was like to be like dismissed, like, oh yes, that's a brilliant idea, moving on. No, we don't do that.
Well, good stuff. Is there anything else that you want our viewers to know on Free Speech TV, on Occupy.com, on YouTube?
I guess this, if y'all are really slick right about now, somewhere about right here, it might say, are y'all that slick? So somewhere about right here, it says movetoamend.org.
And it says it up there.
Oh, wow. It's there too. Movetoamend.org. Here's the thing. Go to that website and click the sign the petition, input your name, telephone number, address, so that we can be in touch with you. That's not a petition we're going to submit on bended knee to anybody. That's an organizing petition.
It's a demand.
We are going to roll with you. We want to hear from you. And if you don't actually have access to the internet somehow, there are still such people, call us, 707-269-0984. We're like Kim Possible, man. Call us, beep us if you want to reach us. We're ready. We want to hear from you.
That's right.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us, and we're very excited that you could fucking tell your stories.
All right.
Fucking
All right.
awesome.
Thanks so much.
Let's get to amending.
All right.
Rock and roll.
Peace.
All right.